Richard Black is a quintessential example of a multi-hyphenate with a career spanning law, broadcasting and property. I'm curious, what are Richard's personality traits that see him able to adapt to change, which is something that so many of us do find such a challenge? How has Richard's diverse career unfolded, and what are his tips for managing what appears to be an unbearably busy schedule on the surface? Also, how did he turn a £269,000 property into one valued at 1.3 million? Tips and tricks, please. Richard, welcome to the Designerati podcast.
Thank you. It's a joy to be here.
You are so brown and glowing.
People keep saying that. I've been to
been?
the beautiful Isles of Scilly.
Why?
Because it's absolutely gorgeous. First time I've ever been there. Didn't know it existed, to be fair, because I'm from the east of the country, and that's as far west as you can get in the British Isles, I think. And it's like the Maldives of the UK. I never knew it existed. It's absolutely beautiful.
Is a slogan that's going to be pinched by the tourists. The Maldives of the UK.
Oh, it was. Palm trees, the sort of subtropical climate in Great Britain. It's just gorgeous.
You're sparkling. You've got a beautiful glow.
Thank you.
So let's start off with our icebreaker.
Aww.
Something that people wouldn't necessarily either know or associate with you.
This, Melissa, comes back to I was 7 when my primary school had this project where you could draw whatever you want and have it embossed on a plate. And I drew what I, at the time, felt would be my perfect home, my home. Like I say, this was 40 years ago, and I was 7, and that has sat on my grandma's living room wall for 40 years until she passed away.
Cute.
So it's totally cute.
And at 7 years old, you wanted to live in a pink cottage with 4 windows and a yellow roof.
Absolutely, a thatched roof, and there's the image. Okay. The image on my phone here is the house I most recently renovated.
Weird.
In Suffolk. I left that, I think, about 5 years ago.
Life leaves us clues.
That is bizarre, yeah.
But this is a pink house you've painted when you were 7.
And that was Suffolk pink, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And what's weird is this, I didn't even remember this plate existed until the weekend just gone, when my parents, my mum said, I keep forgetting to give this to you, when we were clearing out Nan's house after she passed away. I found this.
What does that say to you? What's the story you're making up in your head?
That, to me, says I was,
a manifester.
I suppose, destined to work with creating homes and creating places and spaces.
And that was the start of your breadcrumb trail, age 7.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I always loved creating things in Lego. I was a real Legoaholic.
What did you build? My
parents didn't have a dining room. We had a dining room, but the dining table was literally my Lego town. I had housing estates, I had fire stations, I had police stations, I had shopping centres, So I was always a creator in that kind of realm, really. And
specifically in building.
Yeah, towns and environments. Yeah, every house had to have a garden. Every car had a garage.
So your career has gone from what to what to what? Because if I'm adding up the dots, what are you, about 80?
No. I'm, I feel it. I don't know if I look it. But,
you look very young.
I'm at the grand old age of 47. Where did things start? I finished A-levels and I thought I wanted to be an architect. Following on from what we've just been discussing, this creativity in buildings.
Is this in the family?
No, not at all. No, not at all. And but I couldn't bear the thought of going to university for 7 years, which is what you had to do back then to be an architect. I hated education. I hated A-levels. So I can remember going to my careers advisor and A-levels, and she was I'm trying to think of what I could describe her, kind of like a Blanche out of Coronation Street kind of character, that kind of snap-on bouffant hair and big glasses. And she was about sort of in her early 60s, I guess. And I said to her I wanted to go into broadcasting. I said for some reason I'd got this pull to go into broadcasting. And she said, I went to school with Esther Ranson. You have to be a special kind of person to be in that industry. You're not it. Go off and do something more conventional.
Wow.
So I went to work for a building society, which is what my dad had done for 30 years. And
for so many people, that would have been the end of a dream.
It was ordinary. I got my wage packet. It was 9 till 5. It was so ordinary. And yeah, I was really, really good at it. I can remember my area manager sort of saying, you are one of the most effective people in my area. You know, you really, your customer service standards are superb. But I hated it. I hated it so much. And I felt like I let my family down almost, because my dad had done this and he'd created a lovely home for us, and out of the wage that he earned doing it for 30 years. I found, I can say it out loud, I found people really difficult. I found the general public, when they're talking about their own money, they could get quite aggressive, actually. And I was just this, 18-year-old cashier. It wasn't my fault they'd gone overdrawn. It wasn't my fault they'd overspent. It wasn't my fault they couldn't afford their mortgage, but it was my fault in their perception.
So you found yourself working in an environment where you were good at your job, but you didn't love it.
Oh, absolutely. So I left and I went to work what I thought, again, was a pretty glamorous job in the marketing department of a big insurer nearby to where I grew up.
So from customer service to marketing.
Sort of marketing. We created pretty brochures, basically, and it was quite creative. And it was seen as a glam department to be in this huge organisation which employed hundreds of thousands of people globally. Again, I can remember sitting there on a Friday afternoon looking at this supposedly glam department. It was Friday afternoon and not one person was smiling. And I thought, is this it? Is this? And funnily enough, my parents had described this particular employer as the grammar school graveyard. And it was where you left grammar school, went to work, and you got given your job, and that's where you stayed until you retired. And yes, you had your wonderful pension scheme and your savings plan, and you had your monthly salary, but you went in at 16 and left at 60, and that was it. And I just thought, I can't do this. I cannot do this. This is not me. And I handed in my notice the following week. And they all thought I was mad. My colleagues were, what are you going to do? Have you got anything to go to? No. And I went travelling around Australia, got my visa, proved that I had the £2,000 in my bank account to be allowed to buy the flight back, because that's what you needed to
Was
get
there
a
a
visa.
process that you went through before you made the decision to resign?
No. I literally went home that weekend, hated it so much, so I can't do this anymore. And handed in my notice. And while I was working my notice, I got a weekend job answering the phones at a commercial radio station that was getting its restricted service license that you got at the time to launch a new radio station in my area.
In the UK?
In the UK, yeah. But it only lasted a month. It was only a trial kind of broadcast that they were doing to prove to Ofcom that they could, work the license and broadcast and stuff. So just as that ended, I'd already pre-booked my flights to Australia. And off I went. That was it. I left Heathrow Airport, never looked back, loved it. I found going around Australia on my own really tough.
What was the motivation for picking Australia of all the countries in the world?
My parents had been a couple of times. I knew I had distant friends of my parents they were good friends of my parents, but they were distant friends of mine, that if I really got cornered, I could call on them. But of course, I didn't know how big Australia was. I was a simple lad from East Anglia. We get in the car and we drive to our destination in Australia. It takes several days. So I can remember touching down in Cairns, and I thought I was determined. And funnily enough, the housing thing, the property development thing, kind of got parked in my mind. I was determined to break into broadcasting. And I knocked on every single radio station and TV station door in Cairns, and didn't quite get lucky. One guy said, yeah, actually, I like listening to you at a radio station. He said, yeah, I could, but I haven't got a gap. You know, you've got a nice voice.
And it didn't matter that your voice wasn't native
Aussie.
to Australia.
No. I then went down to Brisbane, and that was where I got my first break. I did exactly the same thing. I adopted this mindset of, look, you've come halfway around the world. Nothing's going to stop you now. You've flown.
Nothing to lose.
There is no loss here whatsoever. You don't know these people. It doesn't matter if you look a fool, you look a failure. And I can remember walking in Brisbane, and again, the giveaway was in the road name. All of the TV stations were on a road called Mount Cootha. I remember it. Of course, I didn't realise Mount Cootha was actually a mountain. And all of the TV stations quite naturally would be on top of it to get the best coverage of such the expansive area that Queensland was, with the transmitters up there. So there I am walking up this mountain along this road and thinking, will this ever end? Where are these TV stations? There's 3 of them. There's 7, 9 and 10. Channels 7, 9 and 10 up there. In the end, I had to catch the bus. I was like, Richard, you failed. You failed. This is not going to be easy. Went into, where did I go first? Channel 10, they had nothing. Channel 9.
You were literally going indoors and knocking on.
I was doing the old-fashioned door bashing. There was no email.
No shame.
No
I fear.
Because I got to a stage, Melissa, in my head where saying no to me that's the worst thing anybody could do to me. It didn't get worse than that. That's, you know, if that's how awful it is, just saying the word no, well then what's that? You know, it's a 2-letter word. Doesn't do me any damage.
Somewhere in yourself you'd reconciled that you were no longer willing to work in an environment that you did not love.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't go back to that. Even now I couldn't go back to that. And we'll talk about me being a solicitor later, I guess. But again, I fell into that trap with that kind of role. I went to Channel 7 in Brisbane. It was the Last Chance Saloon. And I can remember standing in that reception, and the receptionist was quite obstructive. And I just said, it was almost like one of those Julia Roberts moments. You know, I kind of said to her, I've come halfway around the world. I've just walked up a mountain. I'm not taking no for an answer. I want to see the head of your newsroom now. And she kind of really balked at me and sort of thought, my God, who's this mad twit from England?
And you're not a journalist by
No, I
trade.
wasn't trained then. No. This guy came out, Warren Evans, his name was, little man. He's probably retired now, I would have thought. And he said, yeah, come and see me next week and spend a week with us. And I got to know the team there, and they were lovely. And socially, we went out a couple of times. But they all said the same thing: go to Sydney. There's more opportunity there. So again, I picked up my bus ticket, went the 2-day overnight journey on the bus down to Sydney. Stayed off in Byron Bay on the way, bypassed Surfers Paradise. Stopped off at Sydney and stayed with some friends of the family who put me up for free. And again, phone bashed and knocked on doors.
Because you were going to get in TV by hook or by crook.
By hook or by crook. And there would be, it was amazing. I got a couple of weeks' work at, again, Channel 7. And I worked on the beach, believe it or not, at Palm Beach, which was the filming location for Home and Away. So my first job in telly is technically on Home and Away, which is like a globally renowned soap. And I was production runner. I was photocopying scripts and making drinks for cast members. And then at the time, Sky News Australia was starting. And it was part supported, I believe. I didn't quite get to the bottom of the mechanics of it. It was part funded, I think, by Channel 7. And I got to know where they were and their studio complex and what have you. And I phoned and went to see a chap called Angelo Frangopoulos, which is a name that's come back to the UK.
Forget.
Yeah. And he gave me a couple of months contract. He was the head of the newsroom. He's now the head of GB News in the UK. I've not spoken to him since that year, which was 1999. I don't know, but it's absolutely, here we are. And I then thought, right, I've got what I want from this journey. I came back to the UK, having sort of gone down the whole east coast of Australia. And within a week, I was working at my BBC local radio station on the weekends on the sport programming. And then within 3 weeks of that, I'd got my first job as a researcher at ITV in the newsroom, current affairs department at ITV Anglia, as it was then. So that was my journey into broadcasting.
You qualified as a solicitor.
Yeah.
And then what did you do with that?
I hated it. And
Are you specialised in a certain area?
No, I didn't. I got my legal practice certificate, and I didn't go into. I can practice. I have my practice certification renewed every year.
But I guess you can now read your TV contracts.
Absolutely.
And you understand them?
Yeah. It's great because I've just, for example, I've just finished building my own home, which is the one after this particular cottage. And so much of that construction process actually ended up being a legal issue.
How so?
Whether that was planning consent and reading planning terminology, and we had a blip that the planning officer was saying one thing and actually no, I interpreted that differently, so actually we win. Contractual matters with builders, contractual matters with suppliers, and all of a sudden all of this legal knowledge creeps in every single time.
So for anybody renovating a house or who owns their own practice and working with clients, what are the advantages of good legal representation?
Oh, well, from the start, get your ducks in a row. Be transparent from the start. Know what's good. When you're buying a house, you're about to spend 5-6 figures, maybe 7 on anything. That's a lot of money. And it's always buyer beware. There's no obligation of a seller to disclose anything really, or it's very limited disclosure. It's up to you to find what the issue is. Why are they selling? What's wrong with it? Does it need this, that, and the other doing? Is the roof about to cave in? It's your job as the buyer to go and do that. But of course, on the other side of that, there's also the seller can't actively mislead you and induce you into isn't this a great house, and it's perfect and needs no work doing, and then I'll actively tell you it's superb, and then a week after you complete it's falling down, and you discover it's got subsidence and there's cracks that they hit up with the wardrobes and furniture that they would have known about. That's obviously misrepresentation. So again, you can kind of retract and reverse over the scenario and say, actually, you breached the contract because you held out something that was for sale that it wasn't. So there's so many legal aspects.
I'm a massive fan of my conveyancing to be kept. My conveyancing lawyers, I always hire them, people that I know, people that I trust, and people that are local to me. Mm-hmm. One of the things I've noticed in the industry, there's a lot of outsourcing to foreign countries to reduce the costs, within the conveyancing process. And that would be one of the tips that I advocate massively.
Absolutely.
Hire a local lawyer.
Definitely. I've always found so often estate agents are hand in hand with law firms, conveyancing firms, mortgage brokers. And if you're the buyer, that estate agent doesn't work for you. They're not your friend. You've got to treat them like your friend because you want the house they're selling. But actually nobody, I would argue, that is on their books should be working for you. That's a flaw in our purchasing industry. So in our purchase process in the UK. So absolutely, you should find your own conveyancer and solicitor that you feel comfortable with, really airing everything about your finances, your personal circumstances, what you're going to do this property for, buy this property for. And and be reliant on that they're not going to air that linen to the other side, because it is even though conveyancing isn't what I'd call a litigious kind of area of law, what you know does give you power, and what they know gives them power, and there is a negotiation being had all the way through. And you can't compromise that, because you don't want a situation, for example, where the estate agent is told something by, say, the mortgage broker, oh, well, he can't really afford it, or we're doing a bit of an income stretch, that kind of thing. You don't want that. That's not fair, and that's not reasonable, because all of a sudden you've got a dent in your purchasing kind of armory, if you like. So absolutely, and make sure it's somebody you're comfortable with, and
not associated with your agent.
And not, I would also argue, and need to be careful what I say, there are a lot of law factories out there where the conveyancing process is dealt with in a room or in a call centre style environment. No, I've never. You're just on a conveyor belt. It's like ringing a call centre for an airline. You're not getting the thoroughness that a solicitor or a conveyancer nearer to where that property is you're buying is going to give you.
So you're an advocate of building relationships.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So you've created this almost a portfolio style career. So you started off with your broadcasting, and then you simultaneously were renovating properties, and then you graduated in the bar or with the bar?
No. Legal. I'm a solicitor, so I'm not a barrister. Solicitor. There's two different genres.
Okay, so you graduated as a solicitor, and tell me now where you're at. You have your own podcast, property podcast.
Yeah, homework, thehomework.co.uk. That's all about property and property development. And what we tend to do is have a person synonymous with property, or a kind of good brand name that, for example, I've got Beverly Callard, who's the actress who has regularly appeared in Coronation Street and other things, 2 Pints of Lager. She's on. I'm recording with her tomorrow. She's just bought this beautiful barn conversion. So we're talking about that and what's drawn her to that, having moved from just outside Manchester. We've had Jasmine Harmon from A Place in the Sun. She happily told me she never wants to do another development. She'd rather, just buy it all done. And what we do, we take the journey they've been on and we put it into, we paint a picture and put what I would call ordinary folk into it. So, and take the information that they give us and use it. We had Craig Rowe, from a colleague of mine at QVC, and also on A Place in the Sun, and he renovates a lot of flats. So we did a whole show, not only with him, but the subsequent show was about buying a leasehold. So I put my pitch in about the legal side of it. Leasehold has taken a hit, cladding, leasehold law, absent freeholders, communal living. So is it a good buy? What do mortgage lenders look for? That kind of thing. So that's homework. And there's so much information oozing out of that show.
And you're doing QVC?
Presenting on QVC, yes. I'm doing a lot of home interior work, and they've just asked me to do a lot in the kitchen, which is a new place that I'm going to enjoy.
What are their best-selling products in homeware on QVC?
Oh, we do so much. What I'm loving about QVC is the brands they are attached to and they're selling is superb. I was on with Kelly Hoppen Products, obviously a name that needs no introduction in the world of interior design. Hugely fantastic quality products that she's marketing on the channel. Amanda Holden's Bundlebury collection of interior design, which is very sort of, I would say, 70s led and funky and fun, kind of almost the kind of person that Amanda Holden is, that fun, great looking personality is reflected in the products that she's created. And a more traditional designer such as Alison Cork, who I was on with again a couple of weeks ago, last Friday, I think. Some really beautifully decorative, ornate items that really, really sell really, really well. That's homewares. I never...
It's an interesting one. When I said to you, what is the best product, you talk about the people. Because it seems to me to be that's the way the world is moving. It's actually the influencers that bring a focus onto a product, and then the product becomes secondary to the status of the influencer.
I've always been a believer, and actually it's something I learned back in that building society job, believe it or not. It's something like 85% person, 15% product. For me, if people like you, they'll buy from you. If they trust you, they'll work with you. And I think that was why I got told I could be a great solicitor, because people trusted me. I was transparent with them. I was that bank clerk in that building society. People liked me. I was effective because people believed me, and I was a likable person. And the product I was selling them, would be it house assurance or insurance or a current account. They were going to get a good product because the person selling it to them was honest and transparent. And so with me, the houses, I put my heart into them, the developments that I do. And I've always had this mantra that I would never develop a house that I wasn't prepared to live in myself. I would never rent one out that I wasn't happy with the standard that I could live in it. I'm not that kind of landlord. And
so
yes,
your passion for the property precedes your desire for profit.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, definitely. And there are countless business people that would tell me that's absurd, Richard. It's, what is the phrase? Profit is sanity, turnover is vanity, or something like that. No, for example, as a landlord, I haven't put any rent up now for 3 years.
Why?
Because the tenants I have are good. There's never been a problem. And I like them. And I don't want... I am perfectly wealthy enough, thank you. Me adding 20 quid a month rent to poor Peter, who lives in a 1-bedroom flat in Norwich, is going to make not one iota of difference to my life, but it will make a huge shift in his.
That's lovely to hear. A heart-centered landlord.
Well, it's funny because I've always been like that, and I'm the sort of landlord. If I don't have a huge, vast portfolio of property now, because I sold a lot of it to build my own home, and I've always been the sort of landlord that if it needs doing, get it done. I put solar panels on houses. I've put, if I've got replace a front door, I'll always ask the tenant, well, what design would you like? You choose. You've got to live with it. It's your home.
I'm fascinated by your project. Now I have built a portfolio up myself, but I have never turned £236,000 worth of property into 1.3 million. Over what period was that?
That would be Meadowview. That's the most recent one. Meadowview was and by sheer coincidence, the cottage that you saw earlier, we thought was our forever home. We bought that in 2013, not long after we got married. But it broke for us. There was the village we were in didn't like us. We weren't welcome. We had difficult neighbours. There was a lot of jealousy, resentment. There was a lot of anger in that place, and it broke. So we had to sell it. We just couldn't live there. I couldn't bear living there anymore. So this beautiful home that I'd created, but by sheer, we looked for several years, and I stumbled upon a 2-acre site with a beaten up old cottage on it. Remarkably, and sheer coincidence, the village I grew up in, and my husband said to me, "Well, if you think you can do it, let's go for it." But we hadn't sold this house, we hadn't sold this cottage, so we had to, and it was on the market for £225,000 at the time. This is 2017, 2016, and there were...
So only 6 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay, because I was wondering, was there capital appreciation involved in that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But not massively in 6 years. You've added value clearly in some way.
Yeah, absolutely. What happened was we, by hook or by crook, we were going to get Meadowview as it was. It was a beaten up, like I say, derelict 2-bedroom cottage dating back to the 1880s on the edge of a 2-acre site that was on the edge of the village, bordered by the river that trickled in through the village centre and a woodland. It was neck high in nettles, alive with vermin. It was horrendous, and we'd just come from a completely beautifully renovated thatched country cottage.
But this was a different village.
This was a completely different area that I was familiar with, as I said, because I, by coincidence, had grown up in this village. And we put in a silly offer, and I don't mind saying, the agent said to me, we've had 18 viewings on this property today. We're going to last and finals. And I was always told, if you go to last and final, make up a silly number at the end, because it will raise someone's eyebrow. So I think I offered £236,743.97 or something stupid. It was such a bizarre random number. And the agent rung me back and said, "Can I just read this figure back to you?" I said, "Yep, that's the number." And the next day I got the call to say, "Congratulations, you've secured the property."
Oh, wow.
And the agent said to me, believe it or not, the solicitor acting in the sale said that weird £743 at the end of what you'd offered was his fee for the conveyancing. So he and there is the lesson that, yes, it clearly tipped somebody's eyebrows up.
Which is an interesting thing in itself, because it's either that you've offered the highest amount, or you are the least complicated seller,
Yeah.
so you have no mortgage and you're a cash buyer.
Yeah, absolutely. And we had to beg, steal and borrow to get that money together, because, like I say, we hadn't sold this one. And what then happened was we bought that on 6th of January 2017. We cleared it out, made it ready for moving into. Moved in August 2017 when we did eventually sell. So we had to bridge, and that was an expensive 6 months. And then I got planning.
That's quite scary, isn't it, when you're bridging?
Yeah, that
because
the
there's
interest
extra
payment
pressure of the financial payments monthly.
That was about £20,000 across 6 months additional interest payments.
But you were doing this property to live in. This wasn't a commercial decision.
Oh, absolutely no. We were going to do that come hook or by crook, and what we did was use that time to formulate a planning application and get architects involved, and we got planning consent, and spades went in the ground. We moved into this beaten up old cottage, put our furniture in storage, and spades went in the ground in September 2018.
How have you turned it from under £300,000 to over £1 million? How have you added value?
Basically, what happened was Meadowview became a completely brand new house. The planners accepted that the cottage on the site was of no architectural interest. It was
so you've increased the footprint.
So basically what we did was we built a whole brand new house in the middle of the site, 3 double bedrooms. The look is an old Norfolk farmhouse with red brick, thatched roof, huge rooms, underfloor heating, air source heat pump, all the rest of it, very economical and energy efficient. The cottage as was is now my podcast studio, our offices, and we've got a 4-car garage with an apartment above. So there lies the creation. The whole build cost us around about, I've never totted it up perfectly to the dot, but I believe it was just under £500,000. We moved in June 2020. And at that time, we remortgaged to take it off the self-build mortgage, because obviously it had finished and we got building reg sign-off. And the valuer at that point valued it for the mortgage purposes at £800,000, and that was September 2020.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And it was then revalued, like I say, a couple of weeks ago. I got a visit. Somebody knocked on the door or on the gate, December 2021, Yeah. A lady came out of the blue and just said, I've watched your house being built. I love it. I want to buy it. I'll offer you £1.2 million cash now. And we just said, no, it's not for sale. I'm not doing this again. You know, I feel like I aged a decade building the blooming thing. I'm not going to sell it now. Then we thought, well, how much could it be worth? And now it's kind of all finished. I got it valued a couple of weeks ago. It's gone to 1.3 million.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
That is an amazing success story. Any key learnings for self-building?
Oh, self-building was superb. Be prepared is the first mantra. What you think is going to happen doesn't. And every conversation and journey I had with every tradesman became a political debate or management. It wasn't about... You think self-build might be about creating a house. You aren't. You're actually on a journey, and you're towing this train full of tradesmen, all with different agendas, and your conversations with them become extraordinary. I would spend a good half an hour thinking about how I would approach the carpenter about something he might not have done or he might have done wrong.
You need to write a book. I'm laughing. Conversations with tradesmen.
Oh,
I mean, it is a different world.
Yeah, and because also you're halfway through a project, so you don't want to annoy them. You don't want them to
these are the
throw that.
powerhouses.
Yeah, they're in. It's all about power, and they're in control. They aren't. You know, your worst nightmare is them throwing their tools down and calling you a name and walking off site. And so you are in this. And again, the way of approaching it, such as a solicitor would, very in a legal environment, very placid and look. We need this to happen, but what I think you need to be doing is this. Would you be willing to change that and do that? So you're adjusting the conversation at all times, and that's exhausting. Every conversation you're having, time and time again, even if they're not turning up on time. Also, make sure the top tip for self-build is make sure it's in writing, and also make sure and ensure that you know what you're getting is what you want, and be transparent about it with the tradesman. Don't sort of think that they know what you know, because they don't, and it's not their job to. It's up to you to tell them, and if they don't like that, then maybe they aren't right for the job. But you've got to get that in up front. Don't keep changing your mind. Don't keep moving the goalposts for them, because yes, that will lead to conflict and delays.
And my top tips are hire an architect, because they're incredible at creating drawing plans, layouts, spatial plans, and hire a QS, and they can sort out all the budgets.
Really? I didn't do any of that. I had the architect, but he only put into picture what I'm a
massive fan of, the critical paths.
Yeah.
You could probably do them yourself. A critical path that a QS will devise,
Yeah.
which shows a schedule of work. So everybody
Gantt
knows
chart.
when
Yeah.
what is it, a Gantt chart?
Gantt chart.
Everybody knows when they're supposed to be in, what they are needed and required to do, so that everything dovetails in. I'm a bit of a control.
Oh, absolutely. And that sounds beautiful on paper. For example, the builders quoted us. We gave them the go-ahead. They started to run over time. And I questioned, hang on a minute, you're starting to fall back a bit. What's going on? They said, the brickwork. And I said, well, you're the builders. Of course you've quoted for the brickwork. And they said, no, you wanted it in Flemish bond. And I said, yes, we said that from the start. Flemish bond is full brick, half brick, full brick, half brick. They said, we didn't realise and we didn't allow in the time, we're cutting every other brick. So that adds 50% brickwork time. So we overran by a year. And I said, well, you knew at the start.
But that's a good tip to
That
share.
is a
Communication.
fantastic...
Design the alliance. Sit
Yeah.
down and de-chunk it. Go through it in detail.
Absolutely. And
You're a very creative soul. I can instinctively sense that. Tell me about television at the moment, property TV. It's come back. There's a resurgence. What is missing? What would you like to see?
What I'd like to see is... First of all, I'm not going to sit here and criticise any of the incredibly successful broadcasts that we're seeing, and whether that ranges from A Place in the Sun all the way through to Homes Under the Hammer for what reasons that are fairly obvious. These commissions get commissioned year after year, and it's because people like them, people want to watch them. So we have to take that, and we know that they do a good job. I would like to see the next stage. I would like to see more of the journey. For example, A Place in the Sun, we have this fantastic presenter wandering around this beautifully azure blue, green tropical oasis of, say, a Greek island or whatever. And then, you know, Bernard and Linda from Stowmarket are buying their one-bedroom apartment, and that's it. And we're supposed to believe they're off on a dream, and that's it, and they flutter off into sunset. I want to see their journey. I want to see them negotiating with that estate agent. I want to see them instructing a Greek valuer. I want to see them, well, how do we get our furniture over there? You know, will the van go up the road? You know, will it get up the mountainside to our villa? I want to see all that kind of journey. I want to see the reality of it.
More of the process as opposed to just the end result.
And I think that's the solicitor in me saying, actually, it's not that easy. I'm now buying a villa in Spain. The estate agent has told me that all the paperwork's in order. My solicitor, however, has turned around. Who's English and is working under English law and regulated by English legal processes, saying, no, this paperwork isn't accurate or correct like that. So I'm on this journey now. Actually, they don't tell you that on this kind of show. But does that make good telly? I don't know. It's our job as creators to make that good telly. In UK broadcasting, again, I want to see more post-mortem. We're doing a lot of building in this country at the moment. And I have to question whether what we're building is what we really want to live in. Some of the estates that I'm seeing going up at a meteoric rate, it almost feels like this urgent post-war, quick sling them up because someone needs to live in them kind of attitude, which I don't feel is accurate. And I'm probably going to say something incredibly controversial. Are we being told to live in these things?
You need to collaborate with Wayne Hemingway. He was one of our recent guests in here. And he has been commissioned by, I can't remember which council it is, to regenerate. I think he's working alongside local authority projects. I
would love to do something like that because I see some of these. I think a politician said it a couple of months ago, all too often the architecture is based on accountancy rather than, you know, actually what we might want to live in. You know, many developers are crowbarring in thousands of houses in a small space, and that's not going to be good.
Oh, and this comes back to your value, which is connecting to your passion, doing what you love, being true to actually what lights your soul.
It's about we enjoy so much of our homes. It's the biggest thing you'll ever buy. It's the place where you will spend the longest amount of time. So surely that should be your priority of making it the best you possibly can. That's the best views, the best surroundings, the best comforts. And I don't see a lot of that happening. And on the podcast homework, I've followed first-time buyers, and I have to say I'm genuinely shocked at new builds at the moment of, you know, the attitude of some of the developers, the you know, it's a £500,000 house. I'm thinking I wouldn't pay half that for it because it just feels like it's not going to last. I don't know what I'm trying to say.
There's no heart and soul in the
there isn't. It's just very pile it high and sell it not so cheap.
So what next? What is on your horizon?
Well, as we know, I'm as I've just said, I'm buying a place in Spain, which I'm really looking forward to. I hope it works and I hope it comes off. And that's going to be refurbished and rented out on the holiday market and used by us in the winter months. We'll drive down with our dogs, beagles, and spend a month there at a time in the winter months here, because I don't do well in winter in the UK. Don't do well at all, and that's a long-standing issue. As soon as the clocks go back, I'm depressed. End of. Television.
There's a disorder for that. I think it's called SAD.
Yeah. I have a light on my desk that shines in my face. Yeah, one of those sad lights.
Yeah. Science said that this yellow colour is designed to kind of release like positive pheromones within inside of us. So is property where you're staying?
I love television. I'm thoroughly enjoying working with the QVC family. They have embraced me. They've supported me. They are a wonderful bunch to work with. So I'm enjoying developing that. I'd like to work in development and produce some of those shows that I was talking about a moment ago, where we take a property show and we take it to the next level, and we do something a little bit more deeper, and we go through the process a little bit more thoroughly. Other than that, I don't know. I'm writing my columns for Property Investor Today, Landlord Today.
What's the content of the columns?
So far, Landlord Today often ask me to do a lot about investing abroad, because I've been researching and looking for property overseas now for about 5 years, so it's kind of second nature to me. And the processes overseas are very, very different. So that's taken up that.
And it's also a dream for so many of us.
Absolutely.
To relocate and move our lives somewhere different and exciting, maybe.
Well, not just that. Just again, we live in a challenging environment at the moment, and there is a great degree of escapism going on, and which again comes back to why programs like Bargain Loving Brits in the Sun or A Place in the Sun are so popular, because it's that escapism that people are connecting with. We've had a rough, turbulent couple of years, and it's not unreasonable that we lift our heads up now and look at the light. So that's me. I will always stay in property, and even yesterday I was looking at opportunities in the UK. I've stayed off the UK market for the last couple of years, simply because A, I've been doing my own home, but B, it's too aggressive for me at the moment as a developer. Prices were flying so high so fast, it just seemed absurd to go in and buy. I don't buy high.
You need to get back to your manifesting.
Absolutely.
You need to get back and create a course and inspire people to draw their dreams.
Age 7. Now.
Is there any age limit?
No,
Is there any age
no,
limit?
no.
Just keep manifesting your dreams. Thank you so much, Richard.
You're more than welcome.
Lovely to meet you.
Lovely to meet you too.
And good luck with Spain.
Thank you.
Keep us posted. If you have enjoyed today's podcast, do like and subscribe. It means the world. And I'll be here every Monday with more exciting guests in the Designerati podcast studio. See you then.